this meeting of the Urban Renewal Commission on April 20th to order. If you would call the roll, sir.
Commissioner Rachel Lyle-Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Morrow.
Here.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Present.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Doug Neely.
Yeah, here.
Commissioner Sean Cross.
Here.
And Chair Frank O'Donnell.
Here. Now we have a number of comments. These comments will be unrelated to the issue at hand tonight. Those people that wish to make them, I believe, are Jerry Herman. And is there another?
I believe the rest of them are for the item on today's agenda.
Okay, so we have a single comment from Jerry Herman that will be made by Zoom. Is that correct?
Yes, and I do have him in the meeting right now. He asked me to bring up a document that he'd sent along. Jerry, can you hear us?
Mr. Herman, are you there?
You still on? On mute. All right, folks here.
Hold on a second. Jerry Herman, can you, we don't have audible on you.
Our video, there you are. Wait a minute. Just up on, move out of the way. Just the microphone, sir. All right, that's a good question. How long can you hear me?
We cannot discern what you're saying, sir.
Okay. You can't hear me at all?
Yes, we can hear you somewhat, but your volume is low.
Okay.
Do you-
No, this is not good. Well, let me do the best I can. Can you hear me?
You folks want to go with that?
Yeah, I think we'll
Okay, we're going to go with that. Jerry, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead and proceed,
I'll make
please.
it quick. First of all, thanks for letting me comment. And Rachel, good luck in your future endeavors in Europe. That's a joke. Okay, climate code. You guys heard a presentation on that a week or two ago. I want to just give you some clarity on some things. I talked to Rester Cap about these things. I've been working with them off and on, helping you with your mitigation. You've got a couple slides that I'm going to ask whoever's doing the slide movement to move it up to the next one real quick, if you don't mind. I sent you some documents. The essence is this. One, the code has to be kept simple. This mitigation stuff has got to be kept simple because it's going to be a complex thing to get permitted. Can you hear that? Did you all hear that?
Yeah, we can hear it.
Okay, sorry. All right, the lock bar is a lock bar, not a sandbar. If it was a sandbar, we wouldn't have any problems because it'd be a simple thing to modify. The lock bar is where lampreys are using it, responding at this time, only portions that are in the water, not the portion that's above the water. That lock bar is 52 years accumulation. Anybody thinks it's 5 years? No. It took 52 years to build that thing up, and if a simple grading concept can be entertained in your process, it'll be easy to let the tide do some work, and also let the lampreys be happy. And by the way, in the code, in the past, we go up a little more on that document, there were salmon and steelhead being produced in the code, 100,000 a year if you didn't know that, 10 years ago, in net pens, and people loved to see that. It was real recreation to see those fish being raised there, right in the cove, and released. That all stopped in about 2020 when the rock bar built up its height to the point that it's equal to the river, and therefore, the only thing that can happen is when water is a little bit higher, or a big tide comes in, it can keep your cove healthy. That's what your mitigation, I know, is looking at. Okay. Keep going here. Number 3 or number 4. My points today, I'm going to do this within your time slot. 1, if a new slot is created to let the river come in and keep the cove healthy, that's a great idea. It can also be done in other methods that are simpler to permit. Secondly, if the existing exit is maintained, that's really good because it's 100 feet wide. And with minor modification, the tide can still help out. Good luck. I'm going to say this again. Good luck on trying to get a permit to make another major outlet that would enter into the river near to the Highway 99E bridge. Last thing I want to share with you is I heard some people, and that some of you folks on the commission, at least one asked me, what's this business about no recreation? I want to tell you.
Person or overcome those challenges you have with that so that we can understand more carefully what it is you're presenting.
Some other time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to discussion item number 1. I'm sorry, what?
No, I got to see the agenda here.
Okay. That item is entitled Approval to Allow Urban Renewal Staff to Assist.
My question is why, did we have another citizen's comment?
Not on this subject, not on the,
Well, this wasn't on this subject either.
I'm sorry, the only remaining citizen comments are on the subject at hand tonight.
I understand that, but we permitted him to speak. I can't, and it's not on this subject.
Right, which is how we do citizen comments, which are unrelated to the subject being discussed.
Yes, but my point is Jerry Herman's wasn't on this subject either.
Correct. And that's why he was allowed to speak at this point in the meeting.
I think we're going to take public comment.
Oh, I see.
Once we get through
My part.
this, under this item. So,
Excuse me.
Yeah, there'll be public comments
Yes,
on the matter
okay,
at hand
yes,
within
okay.
that subject.
Yes.
so I don't think we have any more public comment not related
Okay,
to
right.
this next item.
Right.
Sorry about that.
So moving on to discussion items, the first one is approval to allow urban renewal staff to assist Summit Development Group to pursue alternative sources of public funding. Before we proceed to that, do you want me to deal with those 2 questions that are posed for Mr. Kabizman?
Sure, that'd be a great place to start. Yep.
I presume that everyone present has read all the letters, some of which were late submittals. The latest one was a submittal by Mr. Jesse Buss on behalf of Mr. John Williams. He brings up 2 issues. One is the suitability of this venue for this discussion, and the second is the long-term subject that we've dealt with before, which is indebtedness. And if Mr. Kabizman could address those 2 issues on behalf of this commission, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Chair O'Donnell and Commissioners. I'm going to briefly go over both of those issues. The first issue that's identified in the letter is that there's the URC currently has no.
Bill, can you give us more volume?
Sure. Does that help? Can you hear me now?
That helps.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So the first issue is whether the Urban Renewal Commission has any active urban renewal projects. And what the letter from Mr. Buss indicates is that there are no active urban renewal projects, and therefore it'd be inappropriate for the urban renewal staff to spend substantial time on any of this. I guess I would point you to your urban renewal plan where the Urban Renewal Commission has identified its projects. And the first project on the list is Rosman Landfill. And the description of a project is a mixed-use lifestyle center consisting of approximately, and it essentially, whether or not, I guess the point is that the development of the Rosman Landfill is in fact identified in the Urban Renewal Plan as a project for the Urban Renewal Commission. The second issue is the use of TIF funding, tax increment funding. And the argument in Mr. Buss's letter is essentially that TIF is currently, Oregon Constitution limits the use of TIF funding to payment of indebtedness. TIF revenue shall be used to pay any indebtedness incurred for the redevelopment of urban renewal project that's put in the Constitution. And goes on to say, using TIF revenue fund UR staff time for a non-UR project, therefore is in conflict with those provisions. And I guess the first point is, as noted above, I think it is an urban renewal project. It's identified in the urban renewal plan. The second sort of unspoken assumption is that urban renewal funds are to be used only for indebtedness, and that's correct. But that doesn't mean bonded indebtedness or indebtedness for capital accounts. If, for example, I hire someone to paint my house, I have, and I'll pay them $10,000, I'm indebted to them. And so indebtedness can mean something besides just bonded indebtedness to pay off bank borrowings. And so essentially, whether the city can use, whether the Urban Renewal Commission can use its staff time or funds to pursue this project is not a legal question. It may be a question of priorities for the Urban Renewal Commission, but I don't see a legal impediment to taking that action.
So your disposition is that this is the proper venue to hear this matter and that we're free to pursue, and you already explained the indebtedness, so I believe that settles that matter. Thank you, sir. Mr. Conkle, do you want to give us an overview of tonight's meeting?
Yes, thank you. Evening, Urban Renewal Commission. So tonight we have Summit Development Group who's going to be here to present their project. This has been through the land use process approved by the Planning Commission. And so tonight they're presenting, really this will be your first opportunity to see this project as they're contemplating it. We're hoping that this offers a time to ask some questions, hear some of the information that they have put together, both from a project standpoint, financial standpoint, employment standpoint. And then the second part of this is that in the work that Summit has done, they've identified a gap in the project, which needs some type of public assistance, public funding in order to make the project successful due to the high costs related to developing on a landfill, whether that be stormwater mitigation, methane mitigation, piling. So there's additional costs that are being incurred on this site due to the limitations and the existing condition of the property. It's not your typical greenfield development. So with that being said, there are other funding opportunities available out there at the federal level, the state level, the county level, in addition to urban renewal. And so part of the discussion with Summit Development, and James and I met with Clackamas County as well, was that there are brownfield funds that are potentially available that could potentially be utilized on this site to help defer some of the costs associated with mitigating and the long-term reporting and monitoring of the property that has to occur. Those funds, though, need to go through a public agency. And Clackamas County is willing to assist Summit Development in seeing if any of those funds are available and if they would qualify and be able to get them. And I hope everyone does appreciate, I do. I think Clackamas County has been very transparent. They would love to work with us on this project to see what's feasible, but they did want to make sure that the Urban Renewal Commission, in this case, was comfortable with the county working with Summit Development before they just launched into it without reaching out and seeing where the local jurisdiction, where this project's located, where they're at. In our staff report, we had proposed, and it was part of the ask as well from Summit, was that Oregon City Urban Renewal District staff would be available to assist as well. We felt that was appropriate so that we have some idea of what's happening with the project, with the funding, with what's available, what the requirements of it are, what they cover. Another option would be to say, okay, county, work with Summit, and hopefully you're able to identify funding at the federal level, the state level, the county level that could then be brought back for this project. So I think that there's multiple ways that this could be addressed, or not at all. If the commission's not comfortable with that, we can have that discussion, and that'll be the direction that we have. So I realize that our memo caused a little confusion. So I'm hoping, kind of resetting this as to what we see as what we're trying to accomplish tonight, are really two parts: an introductory and an opportunity to hear and have questions and a good conversation, and two, where do we feel about trying to identify additional funding from other sources, other public sources on this property, and who should be involved in that? Is it the county? Is it the county and the city? Is it the city? And we can have that discussion as we move through this. So hopefully that helps a little bit, and be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions from the commission?
Just one question. In terms of what's before us, the only cost to the urban renewal district would be some staff time. Is that correct?
Correct. Right now, in their letter that was submitted along with this, is that there is not a monetary ask for urban renewal funds in this project. It's really, do you support them working with other agencies? The county and the city to identify other potential public funding sources that are out there through brownfields, COVID money that's been made available, infrastructure money that's been made available at the federal, state, and county level.
We can't overemphasize that point enough tonight. This is not a direct ask for urban renewal monies, and what it is in search of a brownfield grant, there are only certain vehicles you can use. It has to be a government entity, a tribal entity, or a tax-free type entity. So that's what we're discussing here tonight. Any further questions from the commission?
Yes. Thank you. Staff, so what do you anticipate the level of involvement would be?
I think that'd be a great question to have with Summit when they present. Our understanding and some of the discussions that we've had was that Summit is willing to do a majority of the work in prepping and responding, putting together the studies. Really, it's, you need that public entity to help shepherd this through that process, because these funds aren't available to a private developer. So really it's, what can we do? I guess I think of it like being second chair. You have another entity that's doing most of the work, and then you're you're there in the support role, review role, and help process that through.
Okay, so let me ask this in maybe a little bit different way. Since I've received correspondence and communications by phone from constituents, what do you anticipate the level of work to be? Is it writing a letter of support? Is it reviewing applications? Is it checking a box saying that the application is in the city of Oregon City? I'm asking for a little more specificity, but not wanting to pin you down, but say, what do you think in a broader range? Because I know what it's like to be a second chair, and that can include everything. So.
Right. I think from my standpoint, I would want to know what's happening so that I can be informed and be able to communicate with the commission as to what's happening. If the commission only wants us to be able to write a letter, I understand that direction as well. From my standpoint, it is, being supportive of understanding what's being asked and what's being improved or constructed as part of this. I think it's important for us to understand that. So that would be potentially, meeting with Summit Development in Clackamas County to understand the application, to understand what the improvements being proposed are, what the ask is, in terms of a monetary commitment, how long of a commitment, those type of things. I think those are things that, to me, would be important to understand to be able to effectively communicate with you where we're at. So a timeline, I guess I can't put an hour on it right now. I think it's probably going to go in waves like most of the things we do. It'll be pretty calm, and then all of a sudden it'll be, we've got to turn this in the next week or two. Let's get reviews on it. Let's get comments on it, and we move on.
I think the key point that you made, Mr. Conkle, is if this commission decided that the avenue to go was let Clackamas County lead the charge on this, we still want to be advised of where the project stands at any given time as a city of residents. So we can talk about where that choice goes. But again, that's the direction of this meeting tonight, to have that discussion. So I think moving along, I believe I'd like to take the citizen comments. There's only two, and as a courtesy to them, do it and be done with it. Would that be acceptable?
Mr. Chair, could I ask a
Pleasure of the commission.
clarifying question? So Mr. Conkle, you were very accurate in your assessment that this is a request for assistance with regard to these federal, state, county programs. This is not about the project. There isn't a project at this point in time, so I just want to make sure that we have an understanding that we are not here saying we're supporting the project, we're doing it. So if you have testimony, not that I want to squelch any testimony, but it's not about the development, it's about the request, correct?
That is absolutely
Okay,
correct. And
thank
we
you.
reaffirmed it, I think, at least 3 times tonight, so that's a good position to be in. If we could have the citizens come forward, it would be Mr. William Gifford and Mr. Dan Fowler. Oh, no, I called Mr. Gifford first.
And just to note, we also have the members on Zoom. Commissioner O'Donnell,
Sir?
Chair O'Donnell. We also have 2 on Zoom as well, after these 2.
Okay, we'll take these 2 and then we'll move on to those.
Commissioner O'Donnell and fellow Urban Renewal Commissioners. My name is William Gifford. I live in Oregon City. Because Earth Day is coming up in a couple of days, I was reminded of a cartoon that I saw many years ago about an Earth Day conference was going on, and someone in the audience stood up and shouted, "Wait, wait, what if all this is a hoax and all we get is a cleaner planet?" Which I thought was pretty appropriate. And I think how that applies to this situation, whereas since we're not being asked to talk about any project, what if we do this and it doesn't cost us anything except some time, and all we wind up with is a cleaner environment? It seems like a no-brainer, and I'm happy that you are entertaining this idea of letting the county do what needs to be done. Thanks.
I could just, I don't want to get off on the wrong foot. And I think it would be really great if when Summit comes up, we can have this discussion. I think that there's been this thought that if we get brownfield money, you know, I'm not sure the 2 are bifurcated. I'm not sure brownfield money gets invested in cleaning up the property without a project. And I think that would be a great thing for Summit to talk about when they come up. In terms of, I don't want to go down this road that we're going to work with the county and get brownfield money, and whether we have a project or not, brownfield money is going to be invested. I'm not sure that's how this works, because I think a lot of the improvements that are going to be necessary to implement and mitigate are tied to development of the property, right? So I just want to, as much as I love to make an investment and make the earth cleaner, this one has, I think, a tie to it, but I could be wrong.
It'd be nice to get that cleared up.
Yes, it would be.
Well, Mr. Conkle, your comments are much appreciated, and that is an important point of clarification, and you saved me from having to make it, so thank you. Sir.
Chair Donaldson, members of the Urban Renewal Commission, Dan Fowler, I live in Oregon City. I'm reading a letter that's from the Hackett Hospitality Group. Dear Commissioners, the Hackett Hospitality Group encourages you to support the request of the approval to allow Urban Renewal staff to assist Summit Development Group to pursue alternative sources of public funding. In our view, there is no downside to the city or the Urban Renewal Agency in doing so. If successful, it may eliminate or greatly reduce the use of urban renewal funds to support their North End project. As developers of the future Hamplin Inn and Suites, we welcome the continued economic activity. Adding a mix of housing, retail, and entertainment to help create a vibrant new area of Oregon City. Clackamas County, having access to the funds being considered, would be a great partner for the city and the developer to have. This would also show cooperation on how governments can work with businesses to provide environmental stewardship and economic activity. Their project has done a good job in moving through the steps to gain approval, filling the funding gap, and at the same time lessening or eliminating the need of urban renewal funding could be a huge win for everyone. Please approve the request. Thank you.
My thanks to both you gentlemen. Jacob, if you could put us through to the two participants on Zoom.
So Jerry, you should be up first.
Can you hear me now?
No?
Then I have nothing to say. I'm not muted. Let's see.
No, we can hear you. It's just not very loud.
Yeah. Well, here I'll
If you
make
go
a
to the
simple
bottom of your-
statement. Mr. Conkel's summary was excellent, and it hits all the points.
Stop,
And
Jerry.
leave it up to you to do what you like.
Jerry, I think there may be other opportunities to make your presentation, but this isn't working.
I know that. At least you can see me. Bye.
Okay. Jacob, who's the other presenter?
The other presenter is Liz Hannum, and I see her there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
No?
I can hear you.
All right. So I'm Liz Hannum. I'm the executive director for the Downtown Oregon City Association. And I just wanted to give you a quick kind of recap of what's been happening with Summit Development Group and the Downtown Association. Just to give you some kind of context to whatever decision you're going to make. We've had about a year now of meeting regularly, almost monthly, with the Summit Development Group. I think one of my initial concerns about the project specifically was that it would kind of be a new Main Street, and we already have one of those. And so that was a concern that we talked about quite a bit with Summit. And I'm feeling really good about where we're headed. We've talked about specifically what kinds of businesses to avoid in the new development, what kinds of entertainment would be best, and what kinds of tourism that we're looking for. And so I think the conversation has been really constructive. We've also talked about ways to move people from the site to Main Street and back, and potentially other locations around town. And I feel really good about that. I haven't kept up on what your strategic plan is for urban renewal, so I don't have any recommendations, but I just wanted to let you know that I've worked with a lot of developers in other communities, and Summit has been the most communicative with my downtown association, as well as they're actually now, Seth Henderson has joined one of our committees to work on business development. So I would recommend that if it's Summit Development Group or another developer, that you really focus on what kinds of developers are being there working in that area, because national developers won't do that kind of thing. And so just to be aware of what kinds of developers that we're working with as we move forward on that site. And I'm hoping that you can reach out to me if you have any other questions with how things are going with Summit. I'm happy to talk about it. Thanks.
Thank you.
So we can try calling Jerry on his phone number if we want to try that.
That would be fine.
We'll give it one try.
One try.
One. Jerry, this is our one try.
Hello, how are you? Hear that?
Yes, we can hear you.
All I want to say, I'll be real quick about this, is the county permitted that landfill. You must remember this. You probably don't remember. Back in the 70s, and 1970 and 1993, 110 acres, not just 80, were filled with garbage. Counties come forward and is willing to be a partner or path, whether there's a development there or not, to remediate some things with the brownfield money. The brownfield money is what's cleaning up parts of Willamette Falls with the Grand Ron. It's the same kind of idea. So my suggestion would be for you to take advantage of what you can get. What can happen at this point that would benefit the city, benefit that area of landfill, ultimately drainage of Clackamas Cove is what it does. If something can be done from another source to change the dynamic, everyone would benefit. And that's why I think the county's willing to, in part, be involved. They see it as past responsibilities they have, too. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And this is a bit of history, and I don't know how accurate it is, and I've been told this by a number of people in the community, that the Rosman Landfill was actually operated under the auspices of the county of Clackamas. And for many years, they derived the tipping fees from it. They were the beneficiary of it. And when the landfill shut down, I believe there's a $10 million award to assist in the shutting down of it, and that went to the county. Now, I can't speak for the accuracy of that, but that's information that's been given to me. And if so, it would kind of move me toward let the county bring this to fruition. That being said, let's move on to the item at hand. I want to caution everyone, I'm going to hold this meeting to a 7 o'clock hard stop. So tailor your presentations accordingly. We'll start with a staff report from Summit or from you.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't really have anything else to add. I think,
okay,
unless there's a question based on the conversation that's had, we move right into Summit's development at this point.
Any questions or comments from the commission members? Is there someone from Summit Development that wants to come forward and present? Remember, gentlemen, 7 o'clock. And we may have to have another meeting, but we're going to end this one at 7. So in any case, we'll need you to state your name. We know who you represent. I presume we still want your city of residence.
Understood. My name is Seth Henderson. My family lives in Southwest Portland. We're 15 minutes straight up 43. I'm here this evening representing Summit Development Group as well as the Development LLC as its manager. And I have here tonight with me
Craig Mitchell with LRS Architects, Portland-based firm, hometown boy, Oregonian since birth, and apologize in advance. I think I might have added, my family's added to the biomass of the Rosman Landfill at one point in time. But recently relocated, we opened a new office in Bend. So I'm in Bend, but I'm also here a lot. So got my feet in both camps.
So first off, I want to thank the mayor, the commissioners, and city staff for the opportunity tonight to present on the North End development. I realize that 7 o'clock is our cutoff, so we've got about 26 minutes, so we will try to get through this very quickly. You want to go to the next slide? So in terms of agenda, we were actually hoping that we'd have 40 minutes so we could do 20-minute presentation, 20-minute Q&A, but we may need to come back at another point for Q&A. Guys want to do that. So we're quickly going to touch upon who we are. We're going to introduce our overall team, what we've achieved to date, where we are today, the general development plan, and the project benefits, and then obviously Q&A. If you have seen our presentation to the CIC, the Two Rivers Neighborhood Association, the Planning Commission, OCBA, Metro, or the Rotary Club of Clackamas, this presentation is going to look very, very familiar. And the reason that is because if you think about a Venn diagram, you've got the circle, which is what the community wants. You've got the circle, which is what the zoning code allows. And then you've got the circle, which is what's financeable. What can we actually bring to reality? And we're trying to hit that point where all three of those meet. And it's been very consistent. We've modified it slightly throughout based on community input, but otherwise it's been the same project from day one. We're not saying, hey, look at this shiny object over here and this is what we're actually producing. Before we jump into the presentation, two things I quickly want to address, and it actually dovetails very well into some of the questions that were asked prior to us getting up here. So first off, it was stated in the letter that we sent to the commission, we are not asking for a penny today. All we are asking for is the ability to work with city staff to pursue federal, state, and county funds, grants, and forgivable loans. That's it.
Or another government entity, Clackamas County.
Yeah, so Fed, state, county,
Right.
those are the big three that we're looking at right now. And in terms of what support do we need from city staff? So we want the ability, when elected officials from those three levels ask us, what is the opinion of the city? We want the ability to say, not only did we receive a unanimous planning commission approval, not only did we get through without any appeals, but we are also working with staff hand in hand at the city level to get through these applications. So we plan on doing all the work. We will hire the grant writers. We will review it. Essentially, whatever Tony and James want to review and whatever involvement they want to have, they will have it. But we are not requiring anything of them. Does that make sense? Okay. The second item I want to touch upon is the timing. Why are we here today? Why, if we received unappealable entitlements in August of last summer, why has it taken this long for us to get here? And there's probably 3 points I want to touch upon. So first off, it was our understanding that for the last year, city staff's been working with the commission to figure out how does a private developer submit an application to the Urban Renewal Commission? And so what does that application look like? What is the process? What is the criteria for approval? And ultimately, when it does go to public vote, is it the entire district? Is it a group of projects, or is it a single project? So we wanted there to be some consensus among you before we came in, and then it was a discussion not only about our project, but also about what each of you believes the vision is for urban renewal, as well as this project, if urban renewal is involved. So hopefully that makes sense. The second item is, it was our understanding that we shouldn't come before the Urban Renewal Commission unless there was an ask. Were we asking for funds? Or in this case, were we asking for the ability to work with city staff? So unless there was an ask, we weren't going to be on the agenda. It didn't make sense. And the final point is, in regards to the overall funds that we're looking for in this project, which is 40 million, we wanted to make sure that we had done all of our homework. What is available out there? What are the paths to get to that 40 million? Can we get to that 40 million without ever asking the city for a dime? And so when we came to present, we wanted to make sure that we understood what were the options available to us and what would those paths be and what would the requirement be to get that done. So with that, let's jump into the presentation, unless there's any questions about what I just said.
Questions from the commission? Seeing none, proceed.
Thank you. Want me to dive in? So quickly, the first question I'm usually asked is, who is Summit Development? Summit Development is a local boutique sophisticated developer. We're located in the Tiger Triangle. We've got over 100 years collectively internally with development, mixed use, multifamily. Some of the projects that are up there, you've got Block 3, which is in Vancouver waterfront. That's a full block, mixed use. We've done multifamily in Gresham. We've done biotech and office in Southeast Portland. So quite a few different sector types that we've worked on.
Up to me?
Yeah, the rest of the team.
You got it. And for myself, I've been here for over 35 years working in the region. LRS has actually worked on several projects in Oregon City Direct. I've worked on Oregon City projects. We're also done very large projects similar to this regionally. So hopefully you heard of us and what we do and what we're all about. So I'll start to introduce the team, and I'm going to go really fast through this. But a big project takes a big team. And we like to think also we got a deep bench. And we have a diverse team. We have, and more importantly than that, we have a team of people and individuals that have done these kinds of projects. They bring the expertise to the project. And project this complex, this big, you need a deep bench and you need qualified people doing it. And we've been adding more. Oh, I want to go back one. I got to pause for Phil Worth because I know he's out there. Phil is your Oregon City team member. He grew up here in Oregon City. And by the way, rumor has it, and he can correct me on this, but he actually played baseball, I don't know if it's a legit field, on the Rosman Landfill. Again, we've got experts, direct, first what I call first tier, second tier, third tier, and we actually, when we need the expertise, we add to the team. We just actually added to the team. We've got a gentleman in the audience here listening to us right now that our general contractor, we just added to the team this last fall. And they're here to help us understand the engineering aspects of it, but how that it goes applicable to actually building the project, and then getting good intel on budgeting and getting real with the numbers and real with the processes and real with the phasing and developing this project.
One quick comment on the team. I don't know if you noticed as we were going through it. I appreciate the level of effort that Oregon City is putting into DEI and all the processes that they're looking at. We do as well. Fortunately, a lot of the firms that we're working with, being that they've been in the industry for a while, and they understand that for the last 100 years, general contracting, development, engineering, it's been a white Caucasian male world. And so I'm excited that if you look at our team, it's about 30% non-Caucasian male, which is huge for a team that's executing a project of this type. This is the timeline that we're looking at right now. So typically a development project begins when you sign your PSA with the property owner. So your purchase sale agreement, and it says, based on these terms, you're going to buy this property by this date at this amount. And so that occurred in March of 2020. So that's kind of the starting point of this entire process. I joined Summit in April of 2020, predominantly to work on this project. I am passionate about this project. I am fully engaged and bought into this project. And we've been working on it now for over 2 years. The team was assembled over the next 4 months. So we had LRS was brought on board in August, and we brought on structural engineer, civil engineer, all the other components. We worked through our GDP application. We had the draft of that application done in January of 2021. And we then went through the process of reaching out to, I think initially it was 50 and it got up to 70 community leaders. And I believe we actually reached out to the majority of you sitting on the dais. And some of you gave us input and others said it wouldn't be appropriate. And we completely respected that and backed off. But understand that anybody that would talk to us, opponent, proponent, neutral party, whether they wanted to have a beer at Corner 14, whether pizza, whatever it might have been, we met with them, walked the site. I actually walked the parking lot of the interpretive center in the middle of the pouring rain with Gail to take a look at where the ADA ramp might connect between the two properties. So if there's anybody in this room that wants to talk to me, we will meet with anyone at any time. Just let me know when. We went through 3 planning commission hearings, and we received unanimous approval. That was in July. A month later, no appeals. We had our PPA, which is the prospective purchaser agreement, negotiated over that year with DEQ. That was executed in June, just prior. Starting in January of this year, so from August through December, we were out talking to other elected officials and trying to determine what is the best path for finding those additional funds. And the next part of that process was the RFP for General Contractor. So the two finalists were Pence, that I know has done work here in Oregon City, and it was Lee Scrutcher Lewis that I did the Windward with, and Grandin Belmont at the Morrison Bridgehead. We were really excited about the team that Lee Scrutcher Lewis had. They have extensive brownfield experience. They've got a superintendent that's done a ton of mass grading work. So they just had the right team. So it's not only the right general contractor, but who are the right individuals, which is really how we've approached everyone on this team. And so we just met this last Friday with the planning department and had input from building and engineering looking at the next 12 months. So what permits would be required, what's the duration for getting those permits, and just kind of figuring out what are those next 12 months if we want to break ground in summer of next year. The one point up there that says 2.6 billion spent to date, understand that's not patting us on the back. All that's saying is we are fully committed to this process. And there's probably another $1 million that'll be spent as we go through the grant process and working through the drawings for all of these permits, et cetera. So if the commission tonight says, we hate this project, we don't want this in the city, this is not what we envision for this site, then as a development team, we'll probably have to stop and figure out what are our next steps. Next slide.
So we'll talk about the design, the GDP. And again, this is an excerpt of a lot of the slides that you've seen before. I've tried to condense this down. I've also tried to wear a few hats. Normally I've got landscape and other people here with me, but I'll try to do my best getting through all those other aspects of the project. What you have here is the site. Obviously everybody knows, where the proximity to downtown is, the convergence of the two highways, the Home Depot there is a little white rectangle, and then the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center is a little white box, and then we show that this is smack dab in the MUD, or mixed use district, or downtown district. Hang on, oh, wrong thing. There we go. So just to zoom in, just show you, we're smack dab in the middle of the green zone there for the mixed use development. So here's the detail of the site. Again, it's really interesting here. I want to point out, it'll be really important in future slides, is one of the conditions is a direct connection to the end of the trail interpretive center. We can see that was a real challenge for us, and will be a challenge for us, is how we meet that site when there are two adjacent pieces of property, the triangular and the rectangular piece, that basically make a little island out of that, and we have about 60 feet of area to get that transition down, about elevation change of up to 20 feet. So great engineering challenge there for us. Brownfield site. Well, if it was just a brownfield site, that's difficult enough. Master plan for over 60 acres for a new community, that's massive on its own. Here's a constraint mapping that indicates we also are a 100-year floodplain. So we had to address a 100-year floodplain with this design as well. So we were paying attention to all those other aspects, including this. So there's another little burden on the project to make sure that we're conforming with FEMA. And then, yes, an NROD as well. We went through that process. Thanks. So we'll jump right into it. What do you do when you start to create a new town or a new neighborhood? We create districts. So we started to talk about this project in districts. We also talked about this project as creating streets. So basically, we started talking about street grid. We started talking about connectivity, and we also started talking about community development of each one of those aspects of the project, and also how it dovetails into the program for the developer that makes economic sense. So what you'll see, we have a North District, we have an East District, we call the Central District, and the South District. And that's how we always have these conversations with everyone about that, because it's such a big site. You have to start breaking these things down in understandable bites. Here's a rendering view, and again, this is not architecture. This is merely massing. So don't get lost in any of the details here. It's just this is what it could be as far as density, as far as scale. And I can tell you that this scale and the density falls directly in line with what the MUD is telling us to do.
As a matter of fact, one of the things that we discussed as a team going in is to ask the fewest amount of adjustments we possibly could through this process and follow the base zoning and overlays as closely as we could align them. Now, granted, there's a lot of gray area. If anybody's worked with the zoning code and overlays and things, there's a lot of gray area there. So we always have to ask for a few things, but we tried to minimize those asks going through this process. We wanted to meet the intent of the base zoning. I'll jump through this really quickly. All this line work indicates us looking at all the connectivity through the site, both required by the development code and also other provisions, but also multimodal, walkable. In red, those are vehicular transits. In the yellow, basically, those are the pedestrian connections. So we wanted to create a very robust street system with building frontages and spaces for people to walk, interact, and be able to move in a logical order through the site. Give you a better idea of what the section of this property looks like. Here's a section through the proposed massing. Again, these are just very diagrammatic. You see Washington Street section is on the left-hand side. As you move to the east, you can see that we actually go up about 30 feet in grade. And currently we have to create basically a podium for the buildings to sit on because the grade breaks there are so steep. The other aspect of this that's very important when we work with staff and engineering and transportation is what is the character of the streets? So as we started to develop where the streets need to be, what we needed to achieve with those, we had to go into dialogue about what is a multimodal street is. This one indicates that you've got pedestrian throughway, bike throughway, you have on-street parking for traffic calming, and you have throughway for vehicular. What's the character of the street? We have several characters of the street. This is showing you a character of the street in the densest part, which is that North District we talked about. You're going to have proposed 4 or 5-story buildings with a very urban type of feel, much like the feel of downtown Oregon City in scale and in width of streets and character of the sidewalk. In other areas, we're going to have a little different character, like a market type street. The area in red, those buildings would be maybe lower scale, more like some of your storefronts in Oregon City, mom and pop shops, smaller types of retail, commercial, and goods and services. So that's another aspect of this design. We wanted to have the ability to house or provide for very small users to very large users and everything in between. So there's a lot of diversity, there's a lot of energy in this plan. We're going to celebrate those public spaces. What this indicates, those blue areas, those are all those enhanced pedestrian areas. And you see some images here is like some of those areas where the buildings face off. That space in between the buildings is probably more important than the buildings themselves. So it's character building for those public spaces to create those, those memorable places for public to be and be seen and active. Here's an image of along that Market Street or the Main Street and where the buildings face off. We know that we live in the Pacific Northwest. One of the ideas we thought it'd be really great to put these pavilion type roofs around those pedestrian ways and create these places that you're out of the weather or out of the sun and that these spaces could actually spill out into that common area. And here's a little different character. This is in the East District and what we call the Central and South is what you're looking at. So that's like an esplanade. So we created basically a one-side esplanade as a parking field in order to support all those very robust retail uses along the esplanade. So a little different character as you move through the site. You go from an urban character to like a little Main Street character to an esplanade character. Public spaces. This proposal goes so far as to set aside a central square. And the idea is in the North District, with all that robust, more energized retail and housing in this location. Actually, there's 5 buildings in that. You see the U-shaped buildings. Those are mixed-use buildings proposed, housing over commercial. And so with that density, we thought it was really important to provide this public room and look at what we could do there and host different events, restaurants, things like that. There's another aspect to this project, is we call the vertical park. And at the north end, extreme north end, we're embracing, basically, we're taking in a constraint and turning it into an opportunity. Is what do you do with this, basically this mound of dirt at the north end of this project where it's not really buildable? And, you know, how do you create something that becomes an attraction? So the idea is that creating a terrace so pedestrians on Washington Street is this connect all those pedestrian and biking areas, create this kind of terracing up onto what we also call the mesa. So basically, you can imagine this is almost like a calling card from the north end of the project. Again, very robust idea about pedestrian areas, the spaces in between, the ability to basically display goods and things that activate those outdoor spaces. I'm going to wear my landscape hat for a second here. Stormwater is super important. We talk about stormwater. Again, this is a very unique site. Most of the time, we're told we have to infiltrate, keep the water on the site. Well, yes, we need to do that. We need to collect it. We need to treat it. But in this case, we can't infiltrate it. So we're basically talking about biofiltration of the water, the rainwater that's running off all of those hard surfaces. And then those will go into chambers underneath all of the parking fields, and that'll be storm surge. And then that water will eventually go into the system. But basically, we're thinking about all those aspects of the design as we're going through it.
If you'd allow me to interrupt you. The matter at hand tonight is, are we approving either city staff involvement or another government entity to allow you to pursue brownfield? This is a lot of information. It's hard to separate an understanding of the project from proceeding with the brownfield. Have you gentlemen done brownfield pursuits before on other projects?
Just about every single urban project, for instance, in the city of Portland, is considered a brownfield project.
Okay. And then on this project, if you did not receive the brownfield, would you proceed with the project?
If we did not receive...
Or not successful
in those... So for instance, I'm trying to understand the question. There's a $10 million grant from federal EPA.
Right.
If we did not get that, well, we still have a $40 million bucket to fill.
Right.
So it's a question of how do we fill that $40 million?
Right.
And if we do not come to $40 million, then the question is the project feasible? Do we get the returns necessary to bring on equity and debt? And the answer is probably no.
So my question on behalf of this commission is there understanding of the project? First, is it necessary? And second, is there understanding such that they're comfortable with directing you to either our staff or Clackamas County to pursue this? I have questions about the project. I almost feel like I would have rather seen it in a work session where we could have been interactive, because there's questions about your very literature in here about, and some of them is the future financial exposure of the city of Oregon City. And there may be some because the trust fund doesn't pay for everything in perpetuity. So those kind of questions are on my mind. I'd invite comment from the other commissioners. Do you want to proceed with making a disposition on directing them to some government entity to pursue the brownfield, or would you like a work session or some sort? Commissioner Smith.
I have a lot to say, and I really wanted this to be more of a conversation. I think most of us up here believe that it was going to be more of a work session. That's what I thought it was going to be. Because I actually, I'm the only one up here that lived through the Rivers Project in the sense of being on the commission and going through all the details of that. Doug definitely was part of that as well. But I don't think you were on there at the time we got to the end of it. But the thing that I really want to do is have time to discuss this more, because I think there's some things that we learned from the Rivers development, things that could really shed some light on how we go forward with this project. in the sense that it is eventually an urban renewal project, maybe, or whether or not you actually end up needing urban renewal funds. Because I think that if we approach this in the right way, it could be an urban renewal project, and you could get more than the 40 million you're asking for if it's right. But if it's not done this right way, we could be in another 10 years of legal battles in this town where we would never get a dime of urban renewal money. And so unless we have that discussion, we can't really go forward in a project that I think we've all been looking for in this town. So that's the conversation. I respect of all the comments tonight. I think Liz's comments were the best and hit me the hardest in terms of really getting that dialogue that you have had for the last 2 years with downtown should be happening with this group, should be happening with urban renewal. And so some of us says we don't want to meet with you because we hadn't had that opportunity to have that conversation and we didn't want to derail something. But if this development was a conversation in a work session, multiple work sessions, where you understand what urban renewal wants in this town and we understand what you want, and there's a middle ground that we can come to the same agreement moving forward and buy in support from the opposition of urban renewal in this town, then it all works. But we're not there yet, and I worry if you move forward, I worry if this commission even gives the blessing to move forward on brownfield site, and you go through and get grants, and then come back to the Urban Renewal Commission and ask for the funding gap, we're gonna say maybe no, because it's now then setting up this point where the project's so far along, and we haven't come to terms with what really the two visions are, and it's too far apart, and then it all collapses again. And that's my big fear, because I think it could happen. I don't want to see that happen. I think there's really amazing elements to this project. Is this a far better project than the Rivers? Yes, but it's not perfect. Not yet. And so I think that dialogue is crucially important, and I want to have that conversation more, because I think we could, as a group, get to a point where we do say, wow, they understand what we want and what the vision is of this city from our end, and we're willing to pitch in even more than you're asking if it's done the way that we see it and it fits in with your vision. That's, I think, the discussions that we've had want to have. We just haven't really been able to physically have them.
If I might, I agree. I'd like to have a work session, but there are many nuts and bolts we have to go through. But the point is, this commission is going to change. It's going to change over the process of this project. And the ask here, I think, is not a problem for us to do. I think we won't know whether urban renewal monies are required until they find out whether they can get this kind of funding. And I'm actually going to make a motion that we actually use a bit of funding to support this staff and helping them determine whether they can get the kind of brownfield funding that they need. And that is a motion.
Is there a second to that motion? Hearing none, we'll move on for further discussion. Is there further discussion from any of the members? Commissioner Morrow.
Thank you, Chair O'Donnell. So for me, it's vitally important that we know the question that Mr. Conkle brought up, because I was discussing this with him yesterday as I had talked to some concerned citizens trying to say we need to bifurcate the conversation about the development and the brownfield cleanup. And for me, when I heard that, I was like, absolutely, let's do this, especially if it's going to be led by the county. I don't have a problem if there is minimal city staff involvement or, you know, the use of or the spending of urban renewal dollars on staff time, because that's what we're doing right here as well. So I don't have a problem with that, but I just need to know before we make a decision on this if we do move forward, if it is inextricably tied to the development. And so until I have that information, I can't move forward.
I agree with that position, Commissioner.
Yes, thank you, Chair O'Donnell. Again, as I stated at the beginning of the meeting, and you stated at the beginning of the meeting, this is about whether or not we involve our staff in the process of the application. It is not about the development. And I agree with you, Commissioner Morrow, that is not the topic that we've been asked to decide about. And I really I'm not prepared to have a discussion about the development at this particular time because that's not the request. And I would rather keep it separated as was indicated by the staff.
Other commissioners?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure that it is bifurcated, I guess. And to think that it is bifurcated is probably the wrong road. I mean, the whole intent of going after their application is to pursue development on the site. I think it's a mistake to try to make them separate topics when they clearly are not. So if that's what's making you uncomfortable, then we should probably just plan on having another work session. You continue talking about it, but there's nowhere in my mind that these two are bifurcated. They are not two. If they were separate things, they would have asked us a long time ago to go after brownfield dollars. That's not the case. You know, it's tied to the development.
Very good. Can I have a motion from anyone? Yes, please.
Well, and that was my original understanding coming into this until I had a conversation with Mr. Herman, who told me the opposite of that. And so there have been so many back and forths on my understanding of this. And so I need some more time to understand what it is.
I mean, truthfully, though, I think the people to ask, though, are the developers. I mean,
agreed.
I mean, that's my opinion, but they're the ones who know more about the applications that they're going after than any of us. So.
Yes, right.
So do I have a motion from anyone?
I would move that we schedule an urban renewal work session to have a dialogue and question and answers. Is
there a second?
Sure, I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Call for a vote.
Commissioner Rachel L. Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Morrill.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Abstain.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Doug Neely.
Aye.
Commissioner Sean Cross.
Yes.
And Chair Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And I believe that's the correct decision. The two are inextricably linked. This commission has a duty to understand all implications of the project and its funding. It certainly has a duty to understand brownfield funding and its relationship to the project. So if we could schedule a meeting to have that back and forth discussion, I think would get us a long way down the road.
So our next meeting is May 4th, Wednesday, May 4th. Haven't checked dates with Summit. What I was wondering was right now we do not have anything scheduled before the city commission meeting at 7. Would the Urban Renewal Commission be willing to meet at, say, 5:30 to allow a little bit more time in a work session type setting if Summit and their team are available to facilitate that conversation? It feels condensed in an hour. I realize that. So to me, it's either we start early or we find another date. But right now, we do have the 4th open. And if the commission's willing to meet at 5:30, that would at least get us a little extra time to hopefully have a little bit more of a conversation. And we could certainly ask if the PowerPoint presentation, if we can distribute that, and then the commission would have that available to look through that as well in preparing for that meeting as background info.
I agree with that completely. Is this commission capable and in favor of a 5:30 meeting on that date? Gentlemen, everyone available at that point?
Sorry, the date and time was?
Wednesday, May 4th at 5:30. And we can follow up.
Okay.
Sure. It was more if this commission was okay with that and we can make it work, we'll let.
I think it has value, and I think that's the way to proceed, as voted. That being said, I believe we conducted our business for the evening, and I'll recess the meeting. Thanks.